I appreciate all those answers. I want to dwell on the Middle East for a few minutes with you, Scott. Since we spoke last, the United States has targeted Houthis in Yemen. Iran has targeted groups in Pakistan and in Iraq. And Israel has announced that its troops are going to enter Egypt in order to secure the so-called Philadelphia corridor. Question: are we getting closer to a regional war, all because Joe Biden won't pick up the phone and tell Netanyahu stop?
Well, that's of course the that's the right observation. No, we are in a regional war already. It's just a war that's been the escalation of which has been managed by all parties. But the United States has allowed this thing to spin totally out of control. Let's deal with the Houthis first of all. I just need to point out that our attacks against the Houthi have not achieved anything. People need to understand that the Houthi have been fighting American intelligence, American aircraft, and American bombs since 2014. And they beat them. They beat the Saudis in a stand-up fight. They whipped the United Arab Emirates. Two of the most powerful, rich nations in the region were whipped by the sandal-wearing Houthi, using modern weapons that threatened to destroy Saudi oil infrastructure, that destroyed Saudi military equipment, etc. They know how to survive. We haven't destroyed anything. These guys have gone underground. They have tunnels. They have bunkers, and they continue to hit American ships. We have the vaunted American fleet in the Red Sea. Can't stop the Houthi attacks, and will never stop the Houthi attacks. I don't know what we thought we would accomplish by doing this, but one thing is certain: thanks to American military intervention, the Suez Canal is now closed to Western shipping. Not all shipping. Russian shipping and Chinese shipping have no problems transiting the Red Sea. That must be frustrating for the American fleet to see Russian and Chinese ships going to and fro without any hindrance. But American ships, Western ships, any ship affiliated with Israel, isn't. They have to go around the Horn of Africa. It takes time, money. This is having devastating consequences for the Israeli economy and for the Western economy, for that of Europe. When we speak of Iran and what's going on in Iraq and in Pakistan, the Iranian attacks, understand this: the CIA, and I hope you bring this up with Jack Devine next week, the CIA has been running this covert paramilitary operation where we are using Baluchi separatists, Baluchi tribesmen on the border between Iran and Pakistan to destabilize Iran. The reason why these attacks are taking place is that these Baluchi terrorists, CIA-backed Baluchi terrorists, assassinated a senior Iranian military commander. So the Iranians are retaliating. The Pakistanis are likewise targeting these Baluchi separatists. In Iraq, the CIA has been working with various groups to undermine the Iranian authorities, and the Iranians are striking back. They're not going to tolerate this. And again, the CIA's track record recently isn't very good. And all they've succeeded in doing is embarrassing the United States, further strengthening Iran, and further destabilizing the region. And if Israel goes into Egypt, I don't think the Israelis understand. The Egyptians aren't going to back down. If they want a regional war, they'll get one. And this is one where they will literally, look, they've been beaten to a pulp in Gaza. They're scared to death to go against Hezbollah up north on the Lebanese border, because Hezbollah will not only whip them, but take over northern Israel. And now they're going to go up against the Egyptian army. I don't know what kind of dope that the Israeli leadership is smoking, but it must be some really good stuff, because you have to be high to think that this is a pathway to success. And it is Joe Biden's fault. One phone call could end this all right now. Call up Netanyahu, tell him to cease and desist in this ridiculous genocidal conflict that they're waging against the Palestinian people in Gaza, and peace will suddenly break out all over.
Pavel, I'm going to run a rather lengthy clip now of the American Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, speaking in Davos, Switzerland, and making negative comments about the Russians. So you might want to get your pencil ready so that you can at least summarize it I'll stop the dog barking in a minute, so that you can at least summarize it for Alexander. So
It's
this
not
is
Maverick, Judge. It's not Maverick.
no, it's not Maverick, it's Chris. Not my superstar executive producer, Chris, but my German Shepherd Beagle mix, Chris, gets excited. So this is Tom Friedman of the New York Times interrogating Secretary of State Antony Blinken before the globalist elite in Davos. You may want to tell Alexander in Russian what's coming, and then when you finish telling him what's coming, we'll play the clip. You can translate it, and then I want to ask him about it.
Александр, сейчас судья запустит достаточно длинный фрагмент опроса господина Блинкена, госсекретаря США, журналистом Томом Фридманом из Нью-Йорк Таймс, который ходил в Давосе на форуме. И когда это закончится, я вам кратко перескажу содержание. После этого хотел бы задать вам вопрос.
Okay, here we go. So we'll run the clip. Now it's obviously in English. Pavel, and it's long. Pavel, you do your best to make notes and to translate the substance of it, not word for word, the substance of it, especially what he says about President Putin for Alexander. Go ahead, Chris.
Putin has already failed in what he set out to do. He set out to erase Ukraine from the map, to eliminate its independence, to subsume it into Russia. That has failed, and it cannot and will not succeed. Second, Ukraine has not only stood up to the aggression. Over the past year, it took back more than 50% of the territory that had been taken from it in February of 2022. The last part of the last year has been challenging, but even then, something that got little notice. What Ukraine managed to do in the Black Sea, opening it up, pushing the Russian Navy back, and starting to get grain out to the world. It's been the breadbasket of the world. It's gone back to that as a result of actions it's taken.
Let's play it one more time for Pavel's benefit, Chris.
Putin has already failed in what he set out to do. He set out to erase Ukraine from the map, to eliminate its independence, to subsume it into Russia. That has failed, and it cannot and will not succeed. Second, Ukraine has not only stood up to the aggression. Over the past year, it took back more than 50% of the territory that had been taken from it in February of 2022. The last part of the last year has been challenging, but even then, something that got little notice. What Ukraine managed to do in the Black Sea, opening it up, pushing the Russian Navy back, and starting to get grain out to the world. It's been the breadbasket of the world. It's gone back to that as a result of actions it's taken.
Итак, госсекретарь говорит, что Путину не удалось достичь своих целей, а это стереть Украину с карты, лишить ее независимости и да просто включить ее в состав России силой. Украина противостояла агрессии и достаточно успешно. Вот, например, удалось отвоевать 50% территории, которые Россия захватила в феврале 2022 года. В последнее время все идет не так хорошо, но нужно обращать внимание, например, на то, что Украина успешно противостоит российскому военно-морскому флоту и смогла отбросить военно-морские силы России и восстановить движение зерна, то есть важных результатов добилась в том, чтобы продолжать снабжать мир зерном.
Судья, вы действительно думаете, или Блинкен думает, что если бы Россия хотела, она не стерла бы Украину с лица земли? Вы думаете, если бы мы воевали по-настоящему, Зеленский бы катался по заграницам, у них работало бы телевидение, правительство, здание Министерства обороны, и Киев бы стоял практически целый, как и другие города? Россия не ставила себе таких задач.
Judge, do you really think, and does Mr. Blinken really think that had Russia wanted, it wouldn't have erased Ukraine from the earth? And do you think that had we been serious about this, Zelensky would have been able to travel around the world, that TV would work in Kiev, that the Ministry of Defense would stand there intact? It's just, it wasn't our goal. That is why this is not happening.
Вы можете спросить у Скотта, он знает, как воюет армия США. В странах, куда она заходит, не работает ни телевидение, ни сотовая связь, ни радио, ничего. И президент не может полететь в гости к другому президенту или поехать на поезде. Если то, что вы говорите, стереть с лица земли, это то, что делает Израиль с сектором Газа.
And you could ask your friend Scott. He could tell you how the U.S. Army fights. When they go to fight in a country, they would make sure that no TV works there, no mobile communications, no radio. And when they are engaged in a military operation, the president of that country is not able to go and travel to the president of another country. He cannot fly, he cannot use a train to do that. And in terms of wiping off the face of the earth, I guess this is rather what Israel is doing with Gaza.
Мы не ставим такой задачи, Россия. Мы воюем с киевским режимом, с фашистским режимом, а не с украинским, нашим братским народом.
It's just that we don't see this as our objective. We, Russia, we don't fight against Ukraine. We fight against the Ukrainian regime. We don't want to fight against the people of Ukraine, the Ukraine nation, which is a sister nation for us.
Если вы посмотрите на жертвы среди мирного населения за 2 года специальной военной операции, они меньше, чем в секторе Газа за первый месяц боевых действий.
If you look at civilian casualties for the 2 years of the special military operations, they are less than in the Gaza Strip in just 1 month after the operation there.
Да, в любом случае жертвы среди гражданского населения есть. Это, конечно же, трагедия, но российская армия делает все, чтобы они были минимальны.
Yes, civilian deaths are there, and that's a real tragedy. But the Russian army is doing everything they can to make sure they are brought to a minimum.
I appreciate. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
И в заключение по поводу того, что Украина отвоевала 50% территории, вы знаете, что мы сами отвели эти войска, когда уже было почти подписано мирное соглашение в 2022 году, по-моему, в марте. И сейчас бы все остановилось, и сотни тысяч жителей Украины, солдат были бы живы. Но господин Джонс, на тот момент премьер-министр Великобритании, просто одним своим приказом Зеленскому продолжать военные действия, не подписывать договор о мире, обрек на смерть еще десятки и сотни тысяч украинцев.
And in terms of reclaiming the 50% of the territory they initially lost to the Russian forces, well, we moved our troops ourselves, and that was because we were about to sign the peace agreements in March 2022. That would have stopped all of that. But Boris Johnson, who was the UK Prime Minister at the time, essentially issued an order to President Zelensky to continue fighting, and that led to the unnecessary death of dozens of thousands of people.
Got it. Thank you for that answer, for that analysis, Scott. Professor Sachs was just on with us, and he reported, of course, the Israelis will never acknowledge this, that the deaths in Gaza is now up to 28,000. Fewer than 3,000 of whom are Hamas fighters. You have 25,000 civilians slaughtered. Tony Blinken says Netanyahu is going to let up. When Netanyahu speaks to the Israeli people, he says this is going to go on till 2025.
Well, let's take a look at those numbers. First of all, it's horrific losses for the civilians, but this is targeted destruction. The Israelis have admitted it, that their purpose is to inflict so much harm on the Palestinian population that they will turn against Hamas, but that's not succeeding. The Palestinian people are rallying behind Hamas. Another 25,000 number we can speak of is the number of Hamas fighters. And that number is actually much larger because I think there's a dozen or more resistance factions beyond Hamas that operate in the Gaza. But Hamas has 25,000 troops. If Israel is saying they killed 3,000, that number is far less. This means Hamas hasn't even been dented yet. Hamas has inflicted horrific casualties against the Israelis, destroying armor, killing soldiers, wounding thousands. The United States has admitted that no senior Hamas officials have been eliminated. One of the objectives of the Israelis was to eliminate Hamas as a military and political organization. And yet here we are this far into the conflict, and Israel hasn't even dented. As soon as Israel leaves one of the areas they destroyed, Hamas fighters reoccupy it. And then the Israelis have to go back. That is very demoralizing for them. So Israel is a defeated nation right now. Netanyahu is holding on for his political life. But every day that he continues to operate, Israel commits genocide against the Palestinian people, and the United States facilitates this genocide. For your American audience, I hope they're like me. And when you wake up in the morning and look in the mirror, you're ashamed of what looks back, because we are all culpable in this genocide. We are to blame. We elected this government. We empower this government, and we're not doing anything to prevent our government from continuing to support this genocidal behavior of the Israelis.
Before I let you go, taking us back to Ukraine, there's a lot of disputes going on this week between the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, and Joe Biden, about President Biden, about the $68 billion with a B dollars he wants to send to Ukraine. Let's say he gets his way, Biden. Where will that money go? There's no military left. The society is crumbling. What value will it be other than to be stolen by corruption?
Well, the first thing is right now is Ukraine is bankrupt. They can't pay. I say this to the American audience, my fellow American citizens. It's the American taxpayer that pays the pensions of Ukrainian pensioners. Now, I'm not saying that we should have these old people suffer, but it just shows you the bankrupt nature of the Ukrainian government. We pay the salaries of every soldier, of every bureaucrat, of every civil servant. We pay everything. The Ukrainian economy is non-functioning, and so the $68 billion would go to to beef up the Ukrainian economy, to build a safety net for Ukraine, those in need. All the things that American government should be doing for Americans, we're going to do it for the Ukrainians. Any military aid that goes in there, first of all, we've exhausted our ability to give the Ukrainians new military equipment. We've given it all to the Israelis. If we give Ukraine equipment, we have to build it from scratch. So this money would be sent into American defense industries that would then take months, if not years, to build this equipment. Look, Russia's winning this war. They're going to win this war this year. This is wasted money, and that's what every American should understand. This is, this is doubling down on stupid. We've been stupid up to date with what we provide the Ukrainians. It should be obvious to everybody now that this is a failed policy. Why would we double down and put $68 billion more into a failed operation that has no chance of success, especially when we have a border? And I don't want to get into domestic politics too much, but
Right.
we have a border that's just wide open that is begging for investment, begging for some of this money to go down there, a lot of this money to go down there. I don't think this money is going to get out of Congress. I think that Ukraine is going to be left with societal collapse that parallels their military.